The Prince of Cockroach. The prince's struggle to regain his human form and reclaim his kingdom. In the kingdom of Vopalan, the sun kissed the royal towers every day, and the rivers hummed lullabies at night. The people lived simple, joyful lives under the reign of King Adhesiza, a wise and just ruler who listened more than he spoke. But it was his son, Prince Abelza, who truly stole the hearts of the people. Prince Abelza was no ordinary prince. He rode his horse through muddy villages just to share stories with farmers' children. He helped bakers knead dough and gave away his shoes to a boy whose feet bled from walking. His heart was warm, his smile constant, and his spirit generous. When the time would come, the people knew, Abelza would be a king the bards would sing of for centuries. But where there is light, a shadow always waits. Zabron, the general, had long been resentful of how the prince received praise from the people, and the high respect. Although he had served King Adhesiza faithfully for decades, yet with the strength he possessed, it wasn't enough to steal the people's attention. His words ignored, his power limited. To him, Abelza was nothing compared to himself. Zabron knew he would never be king by blood, but power did not always follow bloodlines. If the king were to fall ill, if the prince were somehow unavailable, well, succession laws could be twisted in capable hands. He began to think of a plan to get rid of the prince in his workspace. Suddenly, a shadowy figure appeared in one of the special corridors he used to go to the basement. It turned out the shadow was a wicked sorcerer who had been hiding in the palace because he couldn't roam freely due to the dagger the prince always carried, which posed a danger to the sorcerer. Back in the castle, Abelza continued his days unaware, but strange things began to happen. Mirrors cracked when he walked by, animals flinched from his touch, his dreams grew darker, filled with crawling things and endless corridors. One evening, during the Royal Festival of Stars, Abelza stood at the balcony to greet his people. He waved to the people, trumpets were sounded, fireworks burst in the palace sky. The people roared in joy. Then, he planned to give a surprise to the people. Then, he planned to go down to the palace grounds. And then, it happened. The wicked sorcerer gave something to General Zabron. When the prince was walking in the palace corridor without guards, just as he was about to go down the stairs, General Zabron threw a magical tool given by the wicked sorcerer. The tool emitted a blue-green light that attacked and wrapped all around the prince. After that, the prince turned into a cockroach. In his place, a small brown insect scuttled across the marble floor. A cockroach. The prince who had turned into a cockroach was shocked, confused. He shouted, but it was useless, because no one could hear or understand what he said. In the palace corridor, the prince who had turned into a cockroach ran around looking for a place to hide because suddenly 4 female servants who were also going to pass through the corridor screamed because they saw a cockroach. On the other hand, the general laughed joyfully because the prince had finally disappeared and turned into a cockroach. The general hurried back to his room to prepare his next plan, which was to overthrow the king. The prince who had turned into a cockroach ran out of the palace through the cracks in the palace corridors. No one knew what had happened. No one would believe the truth. Who would dare look at a cockroach and think, "That is our prince"? The cockroach prince now entered the forest next to the palace while running scared, avoiding attacks from predators like birds that suddenly swooped down. Now the cockroach prince had reached a shady tree with a hole underneath, and it turned out there was an old wise owl living there. Fortunately, the owl didn't attack him, so the cockroach prince could take shelter there. Abelza tried to reveal himself. He crawled near old friends, traced shapes on the floor with spilled ink, even climbed onto a letter to leave marks. But no one understood. Some screamed. One maid nearly crushed him with a boot. At last, the prince fled the castle. He scurried through the gates beneath a cart of rotten apples and vanished into the wild. The world beyond the palace was vast and cold and full of things that saw him as food. Birds swooped from trees. Rats chased him under roots. He barely slept, always alert. But he did not give up. He tried to speak once. Nothing but a weak hiss escaped. Soon, the owl seemed to tell something to the cockroach prince, without a sound, only telepathy. It seemed to tell that the prince had been cursed to become a cockroach. However, there was hope to return to being human. That was by training and always praying. If the cockroach prince diligently trained and was able to break a large stone by the tree, then there would be a magical liquid that could cure and restore the prince to his human form. The wise owl then taught him fighting skills and some other abilities, and the prince always trained his body, as strange as it was, learning to jump farther, crawl faster, climb higher. His senses sharpened, he could hear the hum of magic in stones, feel vibrations in the earth, not with words, but with spirit. With every desperate hope, every memory of kindness, every dream he refused to let go. Beneath a moonlit tree on the 5th winter, he lay in stillness and whispered to the moon and the stars, not for power, but for a chance. And somewhere, something listened. Far away, in Vopalan, the throne grew cold. The people grew weary. Zabron declared himself heir apparent. The coronation date was set. But deep in the wilderness, the cockroach who was once a prince stood tall upon a stone, antennae quivering, and fire in his soul. The prince tried to unleash all the abilities he had learned with the wise owl. And, boom, the stone shattered, and a purple glowing liquid emerged. The prince quickly took it. However, before rushing to the palace, the wise owl said, "Drink the liquid when you reach the palace." The day of the coronation dawned with a sky of dull grey. In the capital city of Vopalan, banners hung limp in the air, and bells tolled a slow, somber tune. The people gathered in uneasy silence before the great marble steps of the palace, where a throne had waited too long for its rightful heir. Zabron, draped in a robe of obsidian and crimson, raised his arms before the crowd. "Today," he declared, voice smooth as oil, "we end the years of uncertainty. A king must lead, and I, your general, have answered the call." There were no cheers, only reluctant claps and bowed heads. The memory of Prince Abelza still lingered in every corner of the kingdom. Unseen by all, a single insect crawled between the cracks of the courtyard stones. The cockroach, Prince Abelza, had returned. He had traveled through forests, deserts, and storms. He had walked into the dreams of foxes and danced with lightning bugs under starlight. And now, after 5 long years, he had returned, not with an army, but with knowledge and faith. As Zabron stepped toward the throne, the sky shuddered. A breeze swept across the courtyard, gentle at first, then stronger. The crowd murmured as leaves spun through the air. Clouds parted. The people gasped as they saw it, a cockroach bathed in brilliant, shimmering light. From his back rose tendrils of magic, and in the blink of an eye, his tiny body lifted off the stone. Limbs twisted, wings vanished, his silhouette swelled, stretched, and in a flash, Prince Abelza stood tall once more, cloaked in starlight and silence. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then chaos. "Imposter!" Zabron roared, drawing a jeweled blade. "Lies and trickery!" Abelza raised a hand. "You cursed me, Zabron. You condemned your own prince. And now, justice has come." The duel began. Steel clashed against magic. Zabron struck with practiced fury, blades dancing like fire. But Abelza had trained not just in combat, but in spirit. He dodged with grace, countered with power drawn from earth and sky. The courtyard shook, sparks flew, the people scattered, then circled closer, drawn by awe. Zabron fought like a man who feared exposure. Abelza fought like one who had already lost everything, and would not lose again. Finally, with one last surge of light, Abelza disarmed the traitor. Zabron stumbled backward, cloak torn, sword flung aside. The prince stepped forward, calm and resolute. "I offer you mercy," he said. "Confess and face your judgment." But Zabron spat in fury and reached for a dagger. Before he could strike, a wave of energy from Abelza's palm sent him crashing to the ground, unconscious. The crowd erupted. Cheers echoed through the courtyard as the people ran forward, not to worship, but to embrace. Abelza knelt before his father, who had been wheeled to the balcony, eyes wide with disbelief and joy. "My son," King Adheza whispered. Tears traced lines down his wrinkled face. "You've returned." Abelza bowed. "Not as I left, father, but as I was meant to be." Trumpets sang, bells rang anew, and from the heavens above, the light grew warm once more. Peace returned not like thunder, but like rain, soft, steady, and long-awaited. With Zabron imprisoned and his crimes confessed before the royal court, the kingdom of Vopalan began to heal. His followers faded into obscurity, and the people who once hesitated to hope now walked the streets with song in their hearts. But Prince Abelza, no longer a boy, was not the same. He wore his crown lightly. He spent mornings in the gardens and evenings among the villagers, listening more than speaking. Some still whispered about the curse, the years he vanished, the magic that saved him. But Abelza never denied the truth. "I was made small," he told the council one morning, "so I could see the world from the ground. And what I saw was worth returning for." His rule began not with declarations, but with action. He reformed broken laws, restored forgotten towns, and sent aid to corners of the realm once ignored. Farmers found tools on their doorsteps. Orphans found homes. The winds of justice, once still, now stirred with purpose. King Adheza, his strength failing but heart full, passed away quietly beneath a sky of stars. His final words to Abelza were simple: "You are the king I prayed for." The coronation came again, this time for the rightful heir. Trumpets called across the valley, banners waved, and as Abelza stepped forward, clothed in royal white, the people shouted not because he was king, but because he was theirs. He did not forget the journey. In the palace gardens, he built a small sanctuary called the Owl. There, no creature was to be harmed, no bug, no bird, no beast. Children were brought to learn about the forgotten, the small, and the strange. At the heart of it stood a statue, not of a man, but of a cockroach and an owl with a golden crown. "I feared I'd be forgotten," Abelza once admitted to his advisor, "but I think it's more important to remember the lessons than the legend." The kingdom grew. New lands were explored. Scholars came from distant realms to study the tale of the cursed prince. Bards sang of the tiny creature who carried a king's heart. And all across Vopalan, those who once felt powerless found strength in his story. Abelza ruled wisely, with compassion and clarity. He took no throne for granted, no life as too small. He always left a window open in his chambers, so the wind could speak to him, and on quiet nights, he could still hear the faint whisper of wings. Not from a curse, but from a memory, a reminder that sometimes, the path to greatness lies not in rising above but in crawling through darkness until you find the light. The end.